Discourses on Politics, on Oaths of Allegiance. On the 10th of September 2022, the Privy Council of the United Kingdom met to proclaim Charles III King of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The Privy Council is a body appointed by the monarch, made up of former and current senior MPs, certain bishops, judges and others. They are an inner circle, sworn to secrecy on various matters, whose origins go back to a pre-democratic era. It would be reasonable to say that the Privy Council represents the British political establishment. Before them, the new king pledged to strive to follow the inspiring example in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony and prosperity of the peoples of these islands and of the Commonwealth realms and territories throughout the world. Later in the day, members of the elected assembly in Parliament, the body that is, in theory, meant to represent the people, swore an oath to be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God. Britain has an unwritten constitution whereby the relationship between the head of state, the executive branch of government, has developed over many centuries. It was shaped by the Civil War more than by any other event. The relationship between the people and the government was shaped by a variety of other factors over the subsequent years. These events illustrate the system in Britain. The proclamation ceremony can be best described as the British establishment endorsing the new monarch. The subsequent process in Parliament is an oath to accept that endorsement by the elected representatives of the people. Whilst the remainder of the British people generally accept that decision, and that is not surprising as most individuals are passive when it comes to political decisions, accepting the system that rules over them. Other secular democracies have different processes. For example, in the United States there is a relationship between the president, the head of state and chief executive, the electoral college that casts their votes in each state, and the people who vote in the presidential elections, which the electoral college broadly reflects in their decision. A view from the Muslim world. Some Muslims will have been watching with admiration the orderly, peaceful transfers of power in the secular democratic countries in the West, at least until the 6th of January 2021 storming of the Capitol building in Washington. In the century since the abolition of the last Khilafah, they have lived through political changes caused by invasion and occupation, coups and counter-coups and revolutions. They have also been taught about violent transitions during the history of the Khilafah. In that time, as a collective ummah, we have forgotten what process Islam gives and what the relationship between the ruler and ruled is supposed to be. Our model is the prophetic model, which was succeeded by the best example of the righteously guided khulafa, caliphs, who adopted the method of prophethood, ala minhajil nubuwwat. After that era, the Khilafah still existed, but the method of selecting the Caliphate became corrupted, as did other aspects of the ruling system and relationships between ruler and ruled. Nevertheless, in every era, people would no doubt have been aware of the processes that existed at the time. This discourse is to mention some aspects of this to help reacquaint us with how things should be, or could be. In Islam, the relationship of the people with ruler and government is via the bay'ah process. The details of this, as well as the Shari'i evidence that determine its details, are mentioned in the books mentioned at the end of this article and elsewhere. I will not revise all of that detail here. The bay'ah is a pledge, and as such it becomes a contract between the ruler and the ruled. The ruler is commissioned by a group representing the people, who pledge allegiance to him to be their ruler according to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of his Messenger, to listen and obey, i.e. obey the laws that he adopts, which are to be the laws of the land, in ease or hardship, i.e. whether you agree or disagree with those adoptions, because societies cannot function if everyone adopts their own law, as much as they can. By making this pledge, they have effectively made a contract, which is governed by the Sharia laws of contracts. It requires all the elements of the contract, offer and acceptance, that both the parties are valid, i.e. the ones who offer and who accept fulfill the contractual conditions, that the subject matter of the contract is valid, i.e. it is ruling according to Islam, in what Islam gave the ruler the authority to decide, not exceeding those limits, and not ruling by kafr, i.e. with other than Islam. That contract continues unless its conditions are broken, so a person cannot unilaterally withdraw just because they feel like it. It's worth breaking down some of this further. Who commissions the Caliphate? How is that done? I.e., what's the process? How does that relate to the rest of the people? Who commissions the Caliphate? The role of Caliphate is as the Amir, leader, of the Mu'mineen, believers, because the Muslims need one of them to lead when it comes to many aspects of the Sharia, governance, economy, relationships with the rest of the world, to name just a few. It is an obligation upon all Muslims to have an imam, caliph, such that if one person who is competent in the matter takes it up, the obligation is removed from the rest of the community, according to al-Mawardi. So the Muslims are the ones who elect this leader. The authority, in origin, lies with the Ummah and is transferred to the ruler through the bay'ah process. How is that done? I.e., what's the process? If authority lies with the Ummah, it cannot be via a hereditary process, as in monarchical systems, nor with exclusivity to one family, as it was with Banu Umayyah or the Ottomans. Rather, candidates who fulfill the correct Shari'i conditions to be a caliphate are nominated, by themselves or others, and the Muslims choose from amongst them. Whilst it could be the previous Caliphate canvasses opinions from the people and proposes a successor before passing away, who is approved by the people at that time, it is more commonly understood that it is a group of Muslims who are considered representative of the opinion of people who make the initial contract. These are known as the Walaqd, literally meaning the people who loosen and tie, but who can be called those who have power and influence. In the era of the Khilafah Rashida, these were the senior Sahaba, or the people of Al-Madinah. In later periods these would have been from the ulama. In the future, in the adoption of Hizb ut-Tahrir, these would be the elected representatives of the Ummah who sit in the Majlis al-Ummah. In any of these scenarios, the reality of these people is that they have to actually represent the opinion of the Ummah. If by some chance a group of people calling themselves representative pledge allegiance to a man, and the people express their rejection of that decision, it means they weren't representing the people's opinion. If the people approved or were silent, then the bay'ah became valid. This is because authority lies with the people to choose their caliphate. As a side point, whilst there are some similarities across political realities and systems across the world, there are crucial differences. For example, the Privy Council represents the British establishment, whereas the Walaqd are supposed to be respected by the people such that when they express their view, they represent the Ummah. How does that relate to the rest of the people? The initial contract by the Walaqd, once valid, effectively binds every Muslim to that contract, i.e. every Muslim has that bay'ah on their neck, whether they actively make a bay'ah, pledge or not. In the Islamic system, the acceptance of the Ummah, in a general way, is essential. Anything else would be someone usurping the position of the ruler by force, which is unacceptable and would lead to conflict. It was challenges to the claim by Yazid ibn Muawiyah by Imam Hussein and others, may Allah be pleased with him, that mean Yazid's early years were essentially the rule of an illegitimate usurper, until such time as he received acceptance from the Ummah. In the recent example in Britain, once the Privy Council endorsed the leader, Parliament followed, supposedly expressing the opinion of the people. If any of these steps breaks down, the political tension would be unsustainable and inevitably lead to conflict. Side point. Since the role of Caliphate is to carry out the Sharia duties on behalf of the Muslims, it would only be valid for Muslims to elect the Caliphate. Non-Muslim citizens would be bound by the choice of the Muslim. This should not be problematic in a mature political system, just as in other systems, all citizens accept the final outcome, even though most may have preferred other candidates. Also, selecting the ruler is more of a responsibility than a right. Responsibilities may differ, but whereas when it comes to rights, food, shelter, clothing, security and protection of life, wealth, honor, belief and mind, right to justice, to be judged equally under the law, to be consultant in affairs relating to them, to speak about injustices perpetrated on them, all citizens in the Khilafah are the same. Finally, in every system, even if citizens just have to obey the law, it is a condition for the ruler to believe in that system and commit to upholding that. Jeremy Corbyn was expelled by the political party system largely because he held political beliefs that are out of line with the political identity of the British state. Moreover, notice how King Charles pledged to upholding constitutional government in his accession oath. Britain could not accept a Catholic monarch, never mind a head of state or head of government whose own views countered those of the system of government itself. The optimum relationship between the ruler and the ruled. From the above it becomes clear that the greater the understanding of the Islamic system by the people, the better the quality of the process to implement that system. If people understand this person is appointed on their behalf, they will better understand their role and responsibility. The ruler would understand their role and duty if elected, or appointed in the case of walis, amils or muawinin. If people understand their responsibility, they know the importance of obedience to a legitimate ruler who has been given a legitimate bay'ah. But they would also understand their duty of holding that ruler to account, which is a duty ordained by Allah, and which would improve the quality of the rulers they have. If people understand the system, more people of quality would stand for election as representatives, and inshallah people might choose those who they feel have the most taqwa, political awareness, and ability to those positions, to choose a ruler on their behalf. Conversely, when there is a lack of understanding in the ummah, or the level of taqwa and knowledge declines, or accountability is replaced with passivity or even appeasement of the oppressor, we are more likely to experience poor quality rule, even to the extent that people accept to be ruled by tyrants who rule with other than Islam. The ruled and the ruler. There are two examples which help us best understand the relationship. Regarding the one who ruled, it is said that someone once asked Sayyiduna Ali why problems had arisen during his rule, whereas there had been stability during the time of Sayyiduna Abu Bakr and Sayyiduna Umar. He replied that it was because Abu Bakr and Umar ruled over people like me, whereas I am ruling over people like you, indicating the importance of the best political understanding in the ummah. Regarding the ruler, after the prophets of Allah, the best of men is Sayyiduna Abu Bakr, who as first Khalifa set the standing, launching his term with these words: O people, I have been put in authority over you and I am not the best of you. If I do the right thing, then help me. If I do wrong, then correct me. Truthfulness is a sacred trust and lying is a betrayal. The weak among you are strong in my sight. I will surely try to remove their pain and suffering. And the strong among you is weak to me. I will, if Allah wills, fulfill the rights in full. No people abandon jihad in the path of Allah except that He covered them with humiliation. And when shameful deeds spread among any nation, Allah sends calamities upon them. As long as I obey Allah and His Messenger, you should obey me. If I do not obey Allah and His Messenger, then obedience to me is not an obligation upon you. Now, stand for the prayer, may Allah have mercy upon you.